Hey, how's it going, everybody? I haven't done a book review in a hot minute, so we're going to fix that today. We're going to talk about The Goblin Emperor by Katherine Addison. I'm going to try to keep this real concise for everybody. So The Goblin Emperor is recommended pretty often as like a Hopepunk book, which is basically to say that it's kind of optimistic in tone. It's kind of the opposite of a lot of these gritty, dark, very depressing stories that we see getting very popular these days. This book centers around a young guy named Maya who happens to be fourth in the line for the throne of his empire and becomes the emperor after everyone ahead of him in line dies in an accident. Now, this is a fantasy novel, and Maya is half goblin and half elf, hence the name The Goblin Emperor. The story of the book mostly revolves around Maya adjusting to life in court and all the power that he has, and what makes it a Hopepunk book is that Maya is fundamentally a good dude. Like, he's a good-hearted guy. This is one of the only stories where someone is given absolute power and does not get corrupted. He's just a good dude. I can see why this book is considered a staple in the Hopepunk subgenre because Maya's perspective is very well developed. Like, he's a nice guy, but he doesn't feel bland or uninteresting as a protagonist. He's relatable in the way that he sees himself and the confidence issues that he has, the feeling of being a fish out of water, some of the trauma and his own personal history that he has to overcome in order to be what he can be. All that stuff serves to make him feel real and not just like a wet paper bag that you self-insert into because you think you're a nice guy and therefore you can insert yourself into him. It's not like that at all. Maya is a fully fleshed character, and this book works because Maya works. It's ultimately a character-driven novel about one dude trying to be good with the ultimate power in his hands, and it's mostly successful in that regard. As you can imagine, being half goblin, half elf, if you're familiar with fantasy tropes, there's a lot of like bad blood between goblins and elves usually, and this is no different. And as someone who is half and half, he has to deal with a lot of racism as well. His world's version of racism, not our world's version of racism, but it is still there, and it's another way to make him feel relatable and feel like an underdog despite the fact that he has all this power. It's all good stuff. Maya's a great character, and if you read this book for Maya, I don't believe you'll come away disappointed. However, I do think this book has some very crucial shortcomings. As a fantasy fan, I love world building. I love getting deep into a world and getting lost in its internal structure and culture. This book is not one of those books that's trying to do that. It's not really a deep world the way that Lord of the Rings or Wheel of Time or Stormlight Archive or any of those are. It's mostly just about this one guy. But where it loses me a little bit is in its approach to world building, because despite the fact that the world is not that deep or complex or fleshed out, it's still very convoluted. Like, the way that things are phrased and communicated, to me at least, felt very convoluted, unnecessarily so, because that's not really what it's trying to be, and it doesn't provide the adequate depth to make all of that feel worth it, to make it feel like it's for a purpose. It feels like all of this world's overly complex naming conventions are just there as like a replacement for actual world building depth, because I can't name any legitimately interesting aspects of this world other than just the thin veneer of like, oh, these two races are kind of racist against each other, but that's, it's not really that much in that. And yet all the names for everything are so overly long and convoluted and complex. It's like someone took this tweet, pause it if you want to read it because I think it's really funny. But yeah, it's like someone took that tweet and was like, you know what, that sounds like a great idea, and took it as a challenge and wrote a whole book with that idea in mind. It doesn't add anything really. And like, the main guy's name is Maya. It's like the one exception to the rule, and it's the best exception because Maya's dope. Like, Maya's sick. I like Maya. Maya's nice and simple. It's intuitive. A lot of the best worlds, even the ones that are super deep, still manage to be intuitive. But The Goblin Emperor is not that. Kind of lost me on that front. So overall, I would say this is like a 3 out of 5. If you're a fan of like optimistic storytelling and you want some of that because you're tired of all these grim, dark, cynical ass takes, you think humans are shit and that's all there is to it, check it out. But be ready for a lot of ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. Alright, if you like this video, do all the YouTuber stuff. I want to try and do book reviews semi-regularly as well because I've been doing a lot of other stuff lately. I like all that other stuff, but I like books too, so I want to try and incorporate that a little bit more as well. Cool. Hope you enjoyed. See you later. Bye.